I know most people aren't interested in politics and I can't blame them. Politics seems boring and most politicians seem like a quarrelsome bunch of very mediocre people. The topics and conversations go often along the same lines of thinking over and over again, as if there never was any originality and independent thinking involved. And let's be honest, you can listen to politicians defending themselves, promoting the party, eternally criticizing the others who don't agree with them. The fact that they have vested interests in promoting their agenda is so obvious we don't even think about it. Most people don't follow politics much. There's not many really educated views among people, but rather this generic fatigue and distrust when it comes to politics. Many are confused about all those terms: socialism, communism, liberalism, social democrat, right, left, center, moderate, extremist, and so on. It's time to clarify what actually matters in politics and say a few things that honestly never get said but should be said. I hope this will contribute to the better understanding of politics outside of that horrible and unnecessarily hyped political news coverage. Intro. There's so much noise in today's media, it's difficult to see clearly and to separate the sheep from the goats. People don't think for themselves. Check my previous video. So it's easy to manipulate the average person by throwing in some catchphrases during speeches that are easy to repeat and let people parrot them over and over again. But you're here with me to win perspectives and actually think about things and recognize what's essential. I'm not going to tell you which specific party is good or not. I'm here to tell you which overreaching political attitudes are good or bad. So, here we go. Politics is as if you were measuring it on a scale, on a spectrum. You have a left end, you have a center point, and you have a right end. Accordingly, you can group parties into far left, center left, center right, and far right. Now, before I explain what that means, I already want to make the claim that you can find all the good parties at and around the center point. So centrist parties are legitimate, center left parties are legitimate, and center right parties are legitimate. They support quite moderate policies. Their priorities might shift slightly to the left or to the right, but their central characteristics is that they balance out policies between those two sides around the center. And that's a really good thing, as you're going to realize in a bit. The bad parties, the villain, you find further from the center point. It's commonly called the far left and far right. You can also call such parties and ideas alt-left and alt-right, where alt means alternative. The point is, the far left and the far right are far away from the center point on the political spectrum. Therefore, they are extreme. And that's the point here. The further you get from the center, the more extreme you become. So the bad parties are the extremists on both sides of the scale. Extremism is never good. There hasn't been a time in history where extremism contributed to the well-being, longevity, and peace of any society. What is good is the balanced parties that place themselves at the center and close to the center. Now, let us explore briefly what political left and right actually means. In a nutshell, policies of the left, parties of the left, ideas of the left focus on social equality and egalitarianism. Legitimate left policies means you consider the moral worth of people as the same. No one as a human being is worth more than others, regardless of their social status. Thus, the word egalitarianism, from French word égal, meaning equal. That's why left-wing policies stands for social equality and typically involve concern for the less privileged, the disadvantaged, the poorer ones who don't seem to get along well socially and economically. That's the simple description of the left, and the left's concern seems totally legitimate because there are always people somewhere who don't get along socially and economically in every country. Now, what's the right-wing politics? Well, in a nutshell, policies of the right, parties of the right, ideas of the right focus on social hierarchy and social order. Legitimate right-wing policies means you consider the importance and the inevitability of social and economical hierarchies. Hierarchy means society itself. Hierarchy stands for order, for structure, and the right-side policies aim at supporting and maintaining a current structure of a society, the hierarchy. Typically, such right-wing policies and ideas are called conservative or traditional because they conserve the society's structure, its traditions, and the time-tested ways of living. It doesn't aim to change society, it strives to maintain it. Conservative people don't mind having hierarchies. They recognize them as perhaps natural and definitely desirable, even though they might create some inequalities. So, there we have it, the yin and yang of politics, the preserving force of conservatism on the right side and the force of social change on the left side. The left side wants to improve people's conditions because you always have inequalities of various kinds in society. That's why left side is the side of progressive ideas and progressive attitudes, the wave of change. The right side wants to keep and maintain the core of society, the customs and ideas that work and have always worked, the main structure, the social hierarchy, which keeps the social fabric together. If you pay attention, then you might slowly realize that although those two legitimate sides appear like opposites, they don't really contradict each other. In the same way as yin and yang are not supposed to contradict each other, but to complement each other. In the same way as water and fire don't contradict each other, they just exist in the right places at the same time. It's the same with left and right-wing policies. They are both legitimate because they point at two totally real dynamics in society and life, the forces of preservation and the forces of evolutionary change. Without conservatism, every social change would quickly destroy society, and without social change, a society would quickly become so stiff that it wouldn't be able to continue. So, please take this from this video. It's okay to be conservative, and it's okay to like progress. These are two legitimate views that result from an even deeper source. It has to do with people's inner temperaments, how people want to prioritize things in life. Conservative people, right-wing, remember, appreciate safety and routine. They tend to be very conscientious people. Progressive people are more open-minded, like to experiment with things and are pioneers when it comes to progress. Left-wing, remember? No technological progress without left-leaning people, no stability and endurance without right-leaning people. These are no contradictions. We need both of those sides. And in every conservative person, there is a little progressive one. And in every open-minded progressive one, there is a little conservative person. Now that you know that we need those two forces of change and preservation, you can quickly realize that the balance and harmony between these two is what keeps the society healthy and at its best. That takes me back to the point I made about centrist parties before. It's the good parties of center-left and center-right which make up a regular democracy. Those parties need to engage with each other, negotiate, make compromises for the well-being of society. You will have an exchange between these two forces which will keep the politics of a country in a healthy balance. That is, as long as the political parties talk and interact with each other. That counteracts polarization and maintains unity despite all the differences. And that's exactly what you get with center-left and center-right parties. That's not what you get with far-right and far-left parties. Far-left and far-right parties won't play that natural game of balance. They will only want to enforce their own side, their own perspective, their own view on others. They are authoritative. There is no rational dialogue possible with the extremist people. That's why it's so difficult to solve the problem of extremism, because such people aren't receptive to rational argument. That brings me to the point that I'd like to make about human nature when projecting it onto politics, policies. Moderate centrist parties revolve around the mind, the intellect. They talk and debate, make arguments and analyze despite their imperfections and weaknesses. It's the parties of reason. That's why they are called moderates. The mind, the intellect, is the source of moderation. It keeps the emotional passions in moderation. That's what it means. Extremism, however, doesn't come from a rational place. The extremists come from an emotional place. Obviously, there's always some rationality in their worldview, but that view is totally emotionalized into infinity, and it's the emotion that overgeneralizes and distorts their views. Extremist parties have some little bits of rationality in their arguments, and then they project their simple explanations on every aspect of society, neglecting details and complexities. And no wonder, they don't come from a place of reason, they come from a place of negative emotion. And if you check some of my previous videos, you will know that emotionality in general is more primitive than reason. The reason, however, is more complex, more sophisticated than emotions. So, that's the difference between the legitimate parties of reason and the extremists. Whenever you watch politics on TV, YouTube, radio, or read articles, ask yourself this. What place does this politician and his party come from? From a place of reason, or from a place of emotion? From a place of social unity, or from a place of social hatred and envy? Then you'll know who's good and who's bad. One last thing. The media does us a disservice by just calling center-left and far-left parties just left-wing, as if they were the same people, and by calling center-right and far-right parties just right-wing, as if they were the same people. All are thrown into the same bag, but the differences in degree are essential, because all the problems arise from legitimate centrist ideas being taken to their extremes in one or the other direction. So be on your guard, and every time when making political decisions, ask yourself this: what force do you actually represent? Are you for order or are you for change? And then ask yourself, are you for social unity, or are you always dissatisfied with everything in society? Do you blame society for everything? Because if you answer the last question with a yes, you might be planting tiny little seeds of extremism for a future time, and you don't want that. At the end of the day, no matter what party you choose, it's you who need to get your life in order, and no party, no government can do that for you. It's not their task to live your life. So pull yourself together and keep your hatred and envy and disdain in check. Work on yourself to become your better self, and be aware that in most cases, it's not your party that needs fixing. It's not the government that needs fixing. It's not society that needs fixing. It's you who needs fixing by yourself. Now, go into the world and vote for the moderate parties of balance and reason for a greater good. See you in the next video.